Honeymoon Hotspot workers, what are your best and worst stories regarding newlyweds? A couple came into my camera shop during the old days of film and explained that they were honeymooning and were concerned that their roll of pictures of the honeymoon just kept going for some reason, like way past the 36 frames. When I told them there was no film in the camera, the honeymoon ended right there for the poor bastard husband whose job it was to load the camera. If looks could kill. I work at a hotel restaurant. One day we hosted a wedding reception for a young couple who paid for an open bar. The party was a blast. People got wasted and had tons of fun. Around 2 AM the bride and groom and their closest friends finally left the restaurant to go back to their room. Apparently they decided to all hang out in a room for a while and continue the party. From what I heard, at some point the maid of honor called the bride a lesbian, and the groom socked said maid in the face. She ran, screaming to the front desk and called the police. The groom was arrested and taken to jail on his wedding night for assaulting the maid of honor. 1 year later the couple returned to the restaurant for their anniversary. They were super cool and seemed really happy. The honeymoon suites were always the worst. There was never a real best. I guess the best of the worst was the room with the chocolate. The shower and jacuzzi were covered in it. Cleaning it was awful, but the chocolate butt print impossibly high up on the shower wall was pretty impressive. I used to work at a Hilton hotel near Disney and there was a newlywed couple that had come down from their room and said they had just gotten married and they were looking for the nearest topless bar. I'm confused as to how forward they were and why they would want to spend their wedding night at a topless bar. So I directed them down a sleazy part of town and told them there were plenty down a specific road. Later, I was so shocked I told my co-worker what had just happened and what they were looking for. He then called me an idiot and said, they probably asked for a tapas bar. Well, crap. That was the first time I had heard of said place and never knew they existed or were called that. Drive down Orange Blossom Trail in Orlando looking for a tapas bar. Going to have a bad time. I'm the evening maintenance at a resort and we get a call that a room has a light bulb out. Cool, something to do. So I hop on my 1-speed golf cart and make way to the room with light bulb in hand. I arrive to said room and I knock on the door and announce maintenance. I hear a man say come in. So I grab my key card, swipe myself in, lo and behold the hairiest Russian dude and his smoking hot wife jump from the bed buttoning up their drawers wide-eyed as deer in the headlights. I 180 degrees, tractor beamed my eyeballs to the floor, apologized and waited outside of the door. Wary the Russian opens the door and instead of going in to change the bulb I said here you go, just handed it to him and hightailed it out of there. After long thought I came to the conclusion he had said coming but I misheard behind all of his chest hair and his accent. I live in Las Vegas and I used to work in one of the major casinos on the strip. One night in one of our clubs during a wedding reception one of my employees let me know that he had heard multiple people in a bathroom stall. The stalls had full doors so you couldn't see feet, but you could definitely hear some debauchery going on. I called security and they asked the people to open the door. So, out comes a groomsman, followed by the bride, followed by the best man, followed by the groom, all half naked. They proceed to go right back to the reception like nothing ever happened. I like that both the bride and the groom were involved. That makes it okay. Don't know why, but the maid decided to bust in 2 hours before checkout. Me and the woman were mid-doggy style and she, not the maid, shot under the blanket so fast I was literally there with my dong in hand. I think we've all been there for this one, except the maid was the girl's mom, and the girl was the girl's dog. Sad alert. There was an anniversary at the lodge that I worked at for the couple's 50th. They had their whole family staying there for the big event. After the huge party, the not so newlywed bride had a heart attack and died mid-frick. Huge bummer for the husband, but maybe the best way to go. Wow, way to kill the mood. I was in Mexico with my mother and sister. As we were walking down an outdoor path in the resort, we saw a young girl crying and her boyfriend walking behind her frantic. They were both covered in cuts and bruises, surrounded by security and medical and of course on their honeymoon. I asked one of the staff what happened. The couple was having intercourse on their balcony and fell off, apparently not too high off the ground, but height enough to be beaten and shook up. Not quite honeymoon related, but I work in a high-end hotel chain. and during the reception, I delivered cake, presents, champagne and robes to the bridal suite. Having my own key and not expecting anyone in the room, I let myself in to find the mother of the groom and a groomsman having a little bit of fun on their own. Fair to say I walked out quite quickly. I'm currently on my honeymoon in Delhi, India. We are from Northern Ireland, so not used to the diet. My new wife just vomited at the side of the road, and it's my birthday. Big lad, I'm a fellow non-Iriner who has been to Delhi. I assure you that you will be crapping all the way home at the very least. Your vomiting wife is the least of your worries when your ticket for the flight home may as well list your seat as the toilet in accordance with how long you are sat upon it. Not honeymoon, but I do work at a resort. Approach the cabin door, knock 3 times, housekeeping. Didn't get any sort of reply, so I opened the door and walked into 2 people fricking with ball gags in their mouths. Just doggy style, not even on the bed. Down on the floor, getting their liquid children all over the place. I live on Maui and worked for a while at Enterprise Car Rental. Once I already had a new job lined up, I could get away with anything. This newlywed couple had an economy car reservation and wanted to upgrade to a Mustang convertible. It was supposed to be an extra $100 per day, which the guy could obviously not afford based on the look on his face when I told him. But I gave it to them anyway for free because there was sand in the front seat that I didn't feel like vacuuming. They jumped up and down and hugged me and said I made their honeymoon. The feels. In high school I lived in a tourist town and worked at a video store. One night a Mennonite couple came in and mentioned they were on their honeymoon. They rented an of Green Gables. I worked overnight at a hotel, which pretty much involved me sitting at a desk watching twerk videos until the phone rang. A guy called to complain about room 114 because the guy was watching P on full volume. This was the usual routine for me. Every Saturday this guy would rent the same dang room and I'd get a noise complaint that he was watching P too loud. I would go and bang on the door. No one would answer, and he'd settle down for a bit then start back up. Then the phone would ring again with another complaint and I'd have to comp the room for his unfortunate neighbor. Well, tonight I was fed up. I kept banging and screamed, "I know you're in there. This is getting old. Open up." After a few minutes, the door opened up to reveal a camera on a tripod, a naked woman in bed, and him, naked from the waist down with a camera in hand. He told me he shoots P here and that's what the noise was. He asked me if I ever wanted to frick one of his girls. I must have turned temporarily retarded, because that's the only logical reason I said no thanks. He offered me a $50 tip to continue to allow him to film at our facility, because the last place kicked him out. For the rest of my time there, he got complimentary upgrades to our suites every Saturday. Got married in Hawaii, staying at a swanky resort. Late one afternoon my wife was getting out of the shower, and I had boxers on lying in bed after a long day at the beach, when out of nowhere I hear the front door opening up. I thought it was my wife, and she thought it was me, but in walks a couple with luggage and key card in their hand asking what we are doing in their room. Needless to say, we were upgraded to an oceanfront suite for the rest of our stay due to the screw up at the front desk. We were also comped meals for the rest of our stay, and 1/2 hour bill was also comped. I was serving at a wedding a few years ago that probably fits in the most embarrassing category. It was the part of the reception where everyone gives a speech or a quick toast. When we weren't serving we were expected to line up a specific way, and I am standing there facing the bridal party from across the room. The bride's mother gets up and does this very touching speech on how she wished grandma had been able to see it and what a beautiful bride her daughter was. Then she pulls out this box and says she has something from grandma. She pulls out this old doll, the kind with the huge fluffy dress that people use to set on the bed as decoration. She hands it up to the bride, who starts telling her guests how she's always loved this doll since she was a kid and she wondered what happened to it after grandma died. So the photographer comes up to get a picture of her with the doll, and right as she poses, this little silver ball on a cord falls out of the bottom of the doll. At first I didn't know what it was, but the bride picked it up to look and immediately freaked and dropped it, which set the crowd off. One of my co-workers had to explain to me it was a vibrating egg and it was probably grandma's. To this day I wonder what kind of photos, if any, the photographer caught at that moment. One time in the LAX airport, I saw a couple vehemently arguing and making accusations of fault about seat changes, flight plans, etc. all the way up to the boarding pass counter. Then, when they got up to the counter, they explained politely and cheerfully to the flight attendant that they were on their way to their honeymoon and needed to check their seats. I frequent a natural hot springs in Alaska that has a high influx of Asian tourists and newlyweds during wintertime. The hot springs create huge steam clouds that make the visibility very low while wading in the waist-high water. Apparently, the newlyweds from Japan, I think, believe that consummating their marriage under the northern lights will give them a male child. So, they go to the hot springs in the middle of winter when it's dark outside and frick in the water. It's really weird to be there, wading around, and accidentally run into a couple of mating Asians in the water. David Attenborough voice, and here we see some mating Asians. A while back in the long ago I work at a 4-star hotel. A couple came in for their honeymoon but they forgot to bring in protection and they didn't have any in their rooms and the public toilet on the first floor was out. So the guy asked me in an frisky voice where he could procure himself some contraception. I told him I would get him some. I went to the staff bathroom, got 4 for $2. Yes, we get them cheaper. And brought them to him. He was so glad he gave me $100 for tip. $100. $sign baby $sign. Okay, so I work at a high-end all-inclusive hotel in SoCal. Honeymooners often come here and for some reason crap always seems to get really weird. Possibly because I know one of my co-workers sells Molly. So one night at like 3 AM we get a request for room service and they want mustard, ketchup and a bun. So to get this straight, they did not ask for a hot dog. Being that we are all about customer service, I go into the kitchen and get all of the items and bring it up to the room. I knock once, no answer. Twice, no answer. Then finally after the third knock I get an answer. I give them their mustard, ketchup and bun on the platter and the freaking dude rips off the top of it, grabs the bun, whips out his dong and sticks it right in it. The new wife grabs the ketchup and mustard and dumps it all over it. They both start hysterically laughing and close the door. I was at a loss of words for hours, so I guess they got me pretty good. When I was about 10, my family was in NYC for vacation and we were walking down the sidewalk when we saw a man in a tux and a woman in a wedding dress arguing. When we stopped at the crosswalk I overheard their argument and the woman took off her ring and yelled at the guy, "Wheel, why don't I just give that kid my ring if it doesn't mean crap to you?" and pointed at me. The man quickly tried to hush her but it didn't work as she started to yell louder. We got the heck out of there. You should have accepted the ring. You could have pawned it off for a lot of money for a 10-year-old. I worked as a guest service agent bellman at a nice hotel chain. One weekend during a wedding in one of our banquet rooms I was befriended by a groomsman. Chubby little guy, very nice nonetheless. Participated in a few staged wedding shots around the hotel and whatnot. After getting to know them a little bit I found the entire group of bridesmaids and groomsmen were very close. The chubby little guy was particularly close to the bride. I thought nothing of it. As their reception began later in the evening I'm paged by the front desk to visit a room that had a call for distress. These pages are normal on a wild Saturday night. I grab security and go up to the said room. The groomsman that I had befriended earlier had tried to commit suicide. He had ingested many pills and was laying in the tub half filled with water. The call for distress actually came from his mother, who was living in the same city, and she was the first person he called informing he was going to end it. He had apparently backed out halfway. Long story short, we wheel him out to the ambulance and the bride and groom are there waiting for us in the lobby. As he is leaving with the crew he tells the bride he is sorry and didn't want a suicide on the same day they were getting married, but he loved her too much to go on. They had a short exchange and then he was whisked away. The bride was furious. Apparently he handed her a letter of reasons why they were supposed to be together as well. All the meanwhile the groom was just completely dumbfounded. He had no clue. One of the most ridiculous and awkward things I've seen at a wedding. Oh, the groomsman was fine. Made a full recovery. Not sure if they're still hanging out though. I used to be a bouncer at a nightclub that was part of a major hotel in San Francisco. People would get married and have their reception in the hotel and then head to the club after. One night a couple 2 hours fresh from the altar and their party was in the club. They are sloshed, but the bride is beyond drunk and causing problems. Stumbling into people, being too loud and trying to cross a VIP rope that I'm guarding. Well, She gets across the rope, and while I'm trying to persuade to go back to the other side, she starts grinding on me and saying, "You think you can handle me?" Her husband is about 3 feet away with his jaw on the floor. I asked him to control his wife and he snapped out of his shock. He grabbed her wrist and dragged her out of the club, swearing up a storm. I still feel bad for the guy. I worked nights at the Anniversary Inn in Salt Lake City, UT through college. To save you a search, it's an overpriced themed room and that Mormon newlyweds absolutely go batshit crazy for. Want to spend your wedding night in a pirate ship? We got you covered. Egyptian tombs? Yep. So there have been many a Mormon cherries popped while I was on shift, and a ton of really weird, funny, and sad stories. Funny, 20 minutes after an obviously nervous newlywed couple checked in, the husband opened the door and yelled, "Fricking is awesome." He did this multiple times through the night. Made us laugh every time. Weird, creepy. We had a dad drive the newlywed couple to the inn, and then come in to help them check in. Their kids were clearly adults, so I thought this was weird. Once they were checked in, the dad gave them a mini lecture about the sanctity and spirituality of intercourse, and how what they were going to be doing that night and through their honeymoon would echo throughout the eternities. Super creepy. Sad. More than once we would have bride come running from their rooms in robes, sobbing and in a totally delirious state. They weren't ready for intercourse, and it was clearly a traumatic experience for them. I always felt really bad for them, because it would be really difficult for someone who has been told that intercourse before marriage is evil to suddenly flip a switch and be expected to become a sexual being. I used to work events at a high-end place that did conferences and wedding receptions. To give you an idea, 1-2 year waiting list for wedding receptions and cheapest plan menu was $300 a head. Plus being a hotel, the bride and groom stay in a room on the night. Propositioned so many times. Once every staff member got handed a photo and it was a do not allow to enter and to call security. It was the groom's mother. Apparently she hated the bride so much they put an avo out on her. Took 3 police officers to get her into the police car. She bit one of the security staff. A bride so drunk they refused to allow her to sign the marriage certificate. The ceremony and reception went ahead, but the marriage officially happened next day when sober. The best and most memorable, the bride's father was paying for the reception. Groom asked for a few projectors to be set up so that he could play a movie and photo montage of their relationship. All's going well for 5 minutes until it hits a scene of the bride being pounded by 2 guys, neither of which was the groom. One was the best man. Still to this day don't know who the other guy was. During the video the groom had left via a cab. One other time the newlyweds had a cab called to the airport. We rang the room 30 minutes before the cab call as a courtesy. No answer. Manager goes and knocks and no reply. So you use the house key and there's the couple sleeping. Her in the wedding dress and him half in the suit, both covered in vomit. So many have tried. We are honeymoon couple, please give us freebies. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.